Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre here. Now on this channel, I like to honestly just give you guys the facts, just get straight into the point and really just give you the things that you want to know about a watch and go about our ways. This video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more opinionated, probably going to be a bit more of a romantic idea rather than the facts, which is very different than what I typically do. But we're talking about watches and why I think you should still own a watch in 2021. Now let's point out the obvious first. You don't need to own a watch, and watches are not necessary at all. As much as it pains me to say that as a guy who has a YouTube channel and a business developed on watches, it's definitely sometimes a hard thing to swallow in terms of the fact that watches definitely are not needed tools anymore with the emergence of technology. But I don't think that necessarily matters, because I think watches have now redefined themselves to mean something different. And for people on the outside, they might not understand why people are into watches. When I talk to people on a day-to-day basis and I say what I do, like, well, people are into that. You know, there's an audience for that, and it definitely surprises quite a bit of people. So today what I want to do is really go through those reasons and ultimately why I think you should own a watch still in 2021. Now, before we get into this video, I do want to mention a couple cool products on our site that just hit the website. Some pre-owned models from brands like Yonghan. So looking at their Max Bill collection, have some great deals on some Max Bill automatics, as well as their hand winding, great looking dress watches for the money. And then also looking at brands like Mila Glasuta with their Promare Go, fantastic diver for the money, as well as their SAR rescue timer. Really nothing else like it on the market. I have some great deals on those, so definitely check it out, teddybaldassarre.com, link in the description below. Now, this first point is certainly going to be a little bit sappy, and I apologize up front, but I think it's a very important thing to really get across when looking at a watch. And I think this is, for me, was the really kind of aha moment. And it wasn't necessarily a surprise or anything, but you start to connect the dots and see the importance, or do you see how these things can mean so much more? And that is the idea that watches really can embody something more than just ourselves. Now, with my possession right now, and I'll try to keep it brief because I could probably just talk and talk and talk, 2 watches. One of them is from my great-grandfather on my father's side, and then on my mother's side, another watch for my grandfather. The first watch from my grandfather on my mom's side, it's a Hamilton. It's a very vintage Hamilton, gifted to him in 1969 when he graduated from law school. He was a God-fearing man. He was, traditional Irish Catholic family, put all the kids through private school, and this was a watch that all the kids and grandkids put together to just kind of congratulate him on getting through law school, and kind of as a thank you for the sacrifices he made with 5 children growing up in the east side of Cleveland, and just a great reminder of what that represented. And then, not to outdo it so much, but I think this is the watch here that really for me solidifies and makes me almost look in the mirror every single day and recognize what I do and why it matters, and why I do something for myself, but it also is so much more than that. This is a watch that was owned by my great-grandfather. His name was Canio Baldassarre. He was an immigrant that came over from Italy. This is a vintage Wittenauer watch. This is a watch that dates back to 1958. A watch, again, gifted by family members. And this man, he wanted to so bad develop and establish a life in the United States, have a family. He had 9 children. At the time of his passing, he had basically one individual that could pass on his family name of Baldassarre, and that so happened to be passed on to me from my dad. And there's one other brother in the scenario, just my brother and I, as the 2 only people that are living on this name, as a guy who just came all across the globe to start a life here, and put a lot on the line to make that happen. But the story behind this piece is this watch after his death, my great-grandmother was with my father, and at that time she was going through the estate and he was helping her, and he pulled him to the side and just looked at him, and she knew the magnitude of what he represented for the family and the struggle that they went through. And he handed him this watch and just said, "You are the only Baldassarre." And that, for my father as well for myself, was, I think, almost a reminder for what this is all about. We represent ourselves, of course, but we also represent the people that came before us, the people that gave us the opportunities that we've been given, and how opportunity is an absolute obligation to do the most that you possibly can with your life. And when I look at this watch, I think about Canio and what he was doing, and my father, what he was able to do, and continuing on the legacy. What this watch means and what it can represent is so important. And this is just, of course, one representation of that. And there's certainly other people out there, whether it's heirlooms or just being a significant object in somebody's life. I know you don't want to over-attach meaning to things with an object, because they are just objects at the end of the day, but they really can mean something very powerful and can house something that I think can be a reminder for us as we continue throughout our lives, very unlike pretty much anything else that we come into contact with on a day-to-day basis. And to second up on the point there about a lot of these objects in our day-to-day lives are not really able to do that same idea, it's the fact that watches, for the most part, are sustainable or can last in a world that is very much disposable. Technology, everything else basically in this room that I am in right now is going to have a shelf life to a way lesser degree than a watch. Watches, just by their construction, are made, of course, to tell time, but also, I think, are able to extend a great period of time just given the meticulous nature of their construction. Basically everything we get on a day-to-day basis is it has a shelf life for how long it can actually withstand just regular wear or regular use. But then there's also the idea of it becomes obsolete. Because watches are not appealing to an idea of technology or trying to be the newest and best thing, it almost does represent something that is, I think, just greater, which is an idea that these things are made to last and looking for quality rather than maybe quantity, and thinking about just the construction and manufacturing process that goes into watches. This idea is so separate from the world in which we live when it comes to just quality construction, which is crazy because technology, you would think with advancements would come better materials, but that is not always the case. I think our world is becoming more and more disposable, more and more about the instant rather than the entirety of things. And that is where I think watches can be a great reminder of where quality resides as well as timelessness can reside. Now, next up is individual expression. Now, in terms of total output, the Apple Watch is actually selling more units than the entire Swiss watch industry in terms of exports of mechanical timepieces, which is pretty crazy. But with so much going in one direction towards one product, we all walk around with very similar clothes. We all have a lot of the same brands that we're wearing. We have, same phones for the most part. We all are using the same things on a day-to-day basis. And one of the reasons why I got so into watches was how much variety and point of individual expression that they can represent in your life, both with an individual timepiece as an isolated incident, where I am going in on a day-to-day basis and I'm just wearing a watch and it can just embody something that is reflective of my personality and could be a way to interject it. I'm not necessarily looking for anything in return, but I personally feel good being able to wear something that I think is reflective of who I am and is different. I'd like to walk to my own tune and do my own thing, and that was so cool about watches and why I got so into them. But also from an individual standpoint, and why the first video on this channel was a video showing my watch collection. It was not a way to show off, but one thing I was so fascinated with and got so connected to with watches was the idea of how all of these pieces of a collection just almost became an idea or a piece of art to someone's entire personality. Why you own that watch is almost just a reflection of maybe a little quirk about you or an experience that you went through that you were able to just kind of identify with or experience with the watch itself. It just tells a story and is an extension, I think, of who we are as individuals, and the fact that they can last for so long, they can kind of go about this journey of life with us is part of the reason why I think that story and individual expression is so important and so powerful as we continue to expand as human beings. Now, the next point is self-sufficiency. Now, this is starting to get a little bit cliche. I apologize for that, but for me, I think these are genuine reasons why I think people should own a watch. Now, one of the coolest aspects, especially when I'm talking to somebody that's new to watches, is when you're telling them about a mechanical watch, the fact that it doesn't use a battery. How this is being powered is through your motions. And this automatic watch that I'm wearing here, this is just a Seiko SARC 045, great entry-level JDM watch from Seiko. But the idea that this watch, through my wear of it, will continue to be able to tell me the time and is an extension of my wrist and basically my tool for being able to tell that time, and you have a connection with it. And inside it's basically its entire ecosystem. Like our bodies are self-sufficient in being able to process energy and be able to go ahead about our day-to-day lives, this is even more isolated. The power of this watch is through that rotor and our extension. We are that fuel for this watch to just be self-sufficient and to give us back what we need, which is being able to tell the time or just being able to be a nice accessory that we can wear on our wrist. So that idea that this is almost like its own little ecosystem inside here, and how it's working with the mainspring and the balance wheel kind of being that heartbeat of the watch and being able to tell us back the time, I think is a powerful thing and is very unlike everything else. You have to plug in your phone into the wall. You have to go get gas, and it's all about that kind of weird transactional exchange of energy. This extension of just going about our day-to-day lives, there is no thought about the transition of energy from what we're doing on a day-to-day basis into an automatic watch, and even a manual watch. There's a different appeal to that, which is kind of that romantic, connection that you have with just, winding the crown every day. It's definitely cool, and it's very foreign compared to what we're necessarily just mindlessly going about on a day-to-day basis as we just go with our technology and things of that sort. And I love technology. I do want to mention that. I mean, I love cameras. I'm very much into computers and things of that sort. So it's not like I am against technology, but I think the great separation from the traditional in terms of what we're appealing to on a day-to-day basis is why I think this is very powerful. Now, the next point is going to be history. Now, the study of horology, which basically is the study of time and the measurement of time, goes back centuries, but even the use of a traditional lever escapement goes back centuries. And how we're able to tell the time through a mechanical watch has in many ways been unchanged for years and years and years. And over that period of time, there's been great accomplishments that have been made both because of watches, as well as being, I think a part of history in terms of what was able to be accomplished by man. Talking about the Apollo program, Omega beating you to death with the fact that they took part in that. But there is history there. There's stories behind the timepieces that are being constructed. Just looking at the rich history behind all of these brands and these timepieces, as well as the history of our lives. When I look at a watch, they become very much an embodiment of our own history. The little scratches, the little nicks that we get on the watches, and just our experiences in writing our own history, I think are very much embedded within the watches. And again, because so many other things in our day-to-day lives are disposable and can't really stand to live past a few years of use, I think it just makes it even more impactful that you're dealing with a watch that has significance both on a broader scale of history, but also broader scale of history within ourselves. Now, next up, we have watches are an aspirational pursuit. Now, an idea that I always throw out there is the fact that watches are a marathon, not a sprint in terms of collecting and just enjoying. I believe in order to be interested in something for a long period of time, there needs to be depth, there needs to be challenge, there needs to be something to always look towards. And watches, to me, always has that, whether it is collecting different watches, whether it's a numbers game, it's a game of just getting that grail, or it's a game of knowledge, it's a game of history, it's a game of style and design. There's so many different facets to this world of watches that keeps things interesting, and there's always that next thing to aspire to learn or aspire to own. And that, I think, is a great sign of something that is worth considering and is worth something to hang on to in this long marathon that we call life. And then for the final point, watches are a representation of how we live as well as why we should live. On one front, why I enjoy watches and why I'm a huge proponent of just beating your watches to death, having fun, not worrying about resale value. I think there would probably be other people that would maybe make a more logical conclusion about buying watches. Hey, some of them can retain their value. I didn't want to necessarily make that a point because I think watches are meant to be enjoyed. And for myself, in collecting and what I value more is being able to have watches be, again, an extension or representation of a life well lived. All the nicks, the scratches, looking down at a watch throughout the day and realizing and recognizing how much joy that watch brought you as you were maybe getting a memory of wearing it on a vacation or spending some amazing time with somebody in the past or somebody who's passed away. And this being almost a representation or a reminder of that person, the good times or even the bad times. That is, I think, a very powerful thing about watches. And I believe in the purest form, watches are basically just a reminder of our time and the limited amount that it is, but also that asset that is time and being able to leverage it to do what we want with our lives. And I know it's a very romantic idea that I'm kind of putting out there, but I think it's very true. And sometimes the most simplest reminders and least complicated of reminders and things that are so just in our face about what they're representing, this watch is telling me the time, but can be so refreshing and needed at moments as we're going about our lives of full with distraction, full of happiness, despair, and so many other emotions that we come face to face with throughout our journey. that it's good to just be reminded about the long haul, as well as, there is more to this, and, we can choose how we want to just live our lives. But guys, sorry to be very philosophical with this video. I didn't really anticipate that, but when I'm thinking about watches and why do you appeal to it, it's a total romantic idea. Watches are not necessary tools. You do not need to own a watch. But as humans, as we get more and more just in love with the idea of the next best thing, giving into instant gratification, and again, just I think mirroring the same type of products and becoming more and more like each other on a day-to-day basis, both the good and bad of that, of course, but it does almost, I think, sometimes call for something different and something that is kind of unique to you. And I think watches are a great way to go ahead and embody that. But guys, I'd love to see comments down below. What are some things that you would consider in trying to get people into watches, and why do you think somebody should own a watch, or why should they not own a watch? Again, I don't think you need to own a watch, but as somebody who's totally into this stuff, and when you're trying to just kind of give that idea of why you're fascinated with it, I think these are 7 things that always really cross my mind and why I really just love this stuff, and I'm gonna enjoy it for the rest of my life. But please leave comments down below. If you do agree with these points, you like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Really would appreciate it. Again, apologize for getting a little sappy in some of those points throughout the video, but I love watches. I love to be able to say I do what I get to do on a day-to-day basis. So wanted to kind of give my throw at doing this and offering why I think watches are something that more people should enjoy. But also, while you're down in the comments, a couple other things in the description. One will be a link to TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands. Great way to support this content and what we're doing here, as well as get a great watch, solid price, great customer service. In addition, check out the additional channel, Teddy Baldassarre Reviews, where we're putting out another 3 to 7 videos on that channel every single week. So if you're not tired of watches, a great way to get some more content, as well as follow us on Instagram so you can stay up to date with more content coming down the pipe and see some great photos of watches in the process. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I'll see you all very soon.